Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Washington Gun Law TV. I am Washington Gun Law President William Kirk. Thanks for joining us. Hey, we're going to step a little out of our lane today. We're going to talk about tariffs, but before you turn the video off, we're going to talk about the impact that tariffs can have on the firearms industry as a whole, and therefore the impact it can have on the exercise of your inalienable rights. Now, I want to make one thing perfectly clear. This is not a video that is critical of tariffs. This is not a pro-tariff video. This is a video where we're going to try to keep it right down the middle. We're just going to give you some real simple numbers, some very likely economic impact, and then you get to decide what that really means to you. So today, let's spend a few minutes and let's talk about, can tariffs affect your gun rights? Okay, America, this is what we're talking about. As we know, the current presidential administration is implementing a considerable amount of tariffs against countries who, yes, traditionally have imposed tariffs against us, but we didn't do it against them. I'm not going to get into the wisdom of it or any of that. We're not going to get into a debate, and candidly, you're probably not tuning into this channel to discuss geoeconomic issues. What we are going to talk about, though, today is that these tariffs undoubtedly are going to have an impact on the firearm industry. And anytime the firearm industry is impacted one way or the other, it can have a trickle-down effect on your ability to exercise your Second Amendment rights. So we're going to outline what can happen because of these tariffs, and we're going to break it down really into three categories, okay? We're going to talk about firearms, we're going to talk about ammunition, and we're going to talk about accessories, okay? Now, here's the thing you need to be aware of before we get into the specifics. But back on March 12th, President Trump already imposed significant tariffs on certain types of raw materials being imported into the United States. So, therefore, even if we have an American manufacturer of firearms or of ammunition or of components, the likelihood that all of their raw material was also produced in the United States is pretty remote. So that tariff standing alone will increase the cost of obtaining the raw material necessary for manufacturing. Now, according to ATF data, since the year 2000, American firearms manufacturers have produced almost 172 million firearms. And we have imported into the United States during that same period of time almost 94 million firearms. Now, I recognize all of you have your favorite particular firearm brands, especially when it comes to handguns, especially everyday carry guns and such. Well, understand, depending on where your loyalty lies, the prices may be adjusted. Take, for example, Glock, probably America's most popular handgun manufacturer. Well, there's a 20% tariff now on all European products which are being imported into the United States. But Tariffs, a Brazilian manufacturer, well, they're only being hit with a 10% tariff. Canik, which is based out of Turkey, will only have a 10% tariff on it. But other people might not realize that CZ USA, Weatherby, and Winchester also have lines manufactured in Turkey, which of course will be hit with the same tariff. FN and HK, yep, both European manufacturers, Belgium and Germany respectively, that will be subject to the same 20% European tariff. So yeah, America, you're about to see a price increase in the cost of a lot of firearms, predominantly handguns, but a lot of other firearms that are regularly purchased by Americans. And even though you may believe that it is an American brand, many of these have been bought by international entities and have many of their manufacturing conducted overseas, which means they're subject to those tariffs. Now, when it comes to ammunition, you're going to find that most self-defense type of ammunition is actually manufactured in the United States. However, most of it is also using imported raw materials for manufacturing, which means there will be a tariff impact. However, when we start moving out into ball ammo, target ammo, especially in the handguns, we start seeing a huge influx of foreign companies or inexpensive ammunition, typically, which is going to be manufactured in Eastern Europe. All of that now is subject to a 20% tariff. Yeah, and how much of an economic impact is that likely to have? Well, consider this. The ATF estimates that in a 10-year span between 2010 and 2020, Americans imported approximately 26 billion rounds of ammunition. So unless your ammunition is manufactured using only United States raw material and every component therewith is produced inside the United States, every round of ammunition you're going to purchase is likely going to in some way be affected by a tariff. And let us remember also the huge purchase by a Czech company recently of a huge otherwise American ammunition manufacturer, which now places a tariff on all of the ammunition produced by them. And if you think that's bad, let's talk about the components, okay? In particular, red dots. Most red dots are manufactured where? China. Chinese goods already had a 20% tariff already placed upon them by this administration, but now an additional 34% has been placed upon it in addition to that. So expect the price of red dots to see a significant increase. Now, I bring this all to your attention because if we go back in our time machine and we take a look at the first 4 years that Donald Trump was in the White House, we saw gun sales slump dramatically. And a big reason for that is that on a national level, there was not as much concern about civilian disarmament. The best gun salesmen in the history of the world have traditionally been Democratic presidents. Fast forward to where we are today. Again, the industry is beginning to experience much the same phenomena. So we are seeing sales drop. They rose significantly during the Biden administration and have dropped ever since then, and they are now dropping at a more rapid level. Now, this is consistent with what we saw during President Trump's first 4 years in the White House. But at a time when sales are dropping and then prices could be increasing and could be increasing exponentially, this will put a significant strain on the firearms industry, which, if you know anything about how the firearms industry typically is run, most of these companies are running on paper-thin margins already. Now, does this mean that the president's tariffs ideas are a terrible idea? No, it doesn't. It doesn't necessarily mean that these are fantastic ideas. That's for you to decide. But when we step back and we objectively take a look at one industry, an industry that all of us are very, very dependent upon, it is really hard to see how it will not have a significant and detrimental impact on them. And therefore, it will be all of our responsibilities to support this industry during an economically turbulent time. Listen, I'd love to hear what you guys think about it. Why don't you go ahead and drop your thoughts down there in the comments section. If you got any questions about this or anything else related to what's left of our Second Amendment rights, you guys should know how to get a hold of Washington gun law by now. But if you don't, that's okay. That information, it's down there in the description box. If you got an idea for a video we should be doing around here, you click on that link right there and you tell us all about it. If you want to subscribe to the monthly newsletter, the ability to do that is down there in the description box. And then finally, and most importantly, let's just remember that part of being the lawful and responsible gun owner, like we talk about all the time here, is to know what the law is in every situation, how it applies to you in any instance that you may find yourself. Until next time, thanks for watching and stay safe.